Welcome to RoundTable 360, a monthly gathering of creatives to share, to learn, to ask, to explore. My name is Joseph Carrabis, your host and moderator. Previous RoundTable 360s have explored creativity, collaboration, and dealing with creative blocks. Today's discussion deals with bringing characters to life and will be led by film and stage actress Sabine Rossbach. Wave, Sabine. Basic rules of the road. The first part of each gathering is for the panelists to talk and share. After that, the game opens for everyone. Please use Zoom's raise your hand and chat features to take part. Take it away, Sabine.
Okay, so welcome everybody. I love to see so many faces, some familiar, some new ones, great. Yeah, so today we want to explore how to bring characters to life across creative mediums, that is writers, screenwriters, playwrights, dancers, actors, you name it. That's what we want to deal with, to explore together. And maybe a word to myself. Yeah, I'm Luxembourg based, but of German origin. Actually, I work on stage and on camera and sometimes in the recording studio, where creating characters can be very interesting too. I just say animated characters, you know, maybe, oh, there's lots of things like that. Anyhow, so I would like to open actually with a quote from Donna, one of our panel members, Donna, who wrote 3 weeks ago. Oh, when we thought about the subject, she wrote something like, well, as from her side, she sits down with her character and a good glass of wine. So Donna, I would like to ask you, could you say a little bit more about that? I'm curious.
Well, thank you. Let me unmute here. Now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. One time I was really stuck with my character, and I didn't know another way to get to know her except to pretend I was sitting down with her and having a glass of wine and asking her questions as if I was asking of a real person. And it's interesting that you should open with that, because what I wanted to talk about from my viewpoint is what I do with real people to kind of collect characters. Is it all right for me to tell you about that?
Yeah, sure.
I love people and I love to meet people, but I don't need to be best friends with all of them. So I have a trick of getting to know them very quickly that helps me collect characters in my head. Every time I meet someone, I say, what are your interests? And you'd be surprised about the answers. That it invites them to tell you the thing that they're most passionate about. For example, I was at a football recruiting breakfast for a college, and it was boring as all get out. And there was a young man across the room, I think he worked there. So I sidled all up to him and I said, what are your interests? And the next thing I know, he was lunging across the room, showing me a fencing move. And the rest of the people there were thinking like, either he's crazy or why are they having fun? And I've done that for, almost, for decades with people that I meet. And so in my head, there are all these characters waiting to morph into fictional characters for my mysteries. And I recommend trying it. It's really fun.
Great, thank you. Yeah, the passion. Did anyone else in our little group does it this way? Getting inspiration this way?
I find it's similar for me. I find that my characters come most easily to me when I try to talk to them in my head. So not stressing too much about trying to control them or make them into something they're not, but just have conversations. It probably makes me sound a bit crazy, but it seems to work.
Are you doing it while queuing at the supermarket?
Not out loud, at least.
Joseph, you were nodding.
Well, I don't sit down with a glass of wine. Scotch sometimes, a good single malt, like Killer, something like that. But I've known Donna for a long time, and I sincerely recommend her books. And I'm always amazed at her techniques. They are an inspiration to me. I get characters from my experiences, from my history, from walking down the street, driving down the street. I'll see somebody, and all of a sudden there's an entire universe wrapped around them, and it can be, when I actually analyze it, it is one specific item about them. For example, they might have a slight limp when they walk. They might be chuckling for no reason at all. George Carlin used to have this joke about you see a homeless person talking to themselves in New York City, and if you're only in San Francisco, you'd hear another homeless person continuing the conversation back and forth. And that always cracked me up. Nowadays, yeah, they're on the phone. They're talking to each other on Bluetooth. But I've never had a loss for characters. Sometimes, if anything, I have a loss for characters doing what I want. And I have to encourage myself to do what they want done. So, Ken, did you have something?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the interaction with real life people and asking them what what they're passionate about and things like that. There's another side to it that a friend of ours, although I haven't seen her for some years now, she's an actress. And I'm going to take back the word friend, and this is why. She would ask questions trying to get your story, and you ended up feeling like she was stealing your soul. And it really was oppressive. So one thing I would warn people is, if you're going to approach people and ask them about themselves, do it in a way that is respectful of them and of their existence, and don't see it as like you're mining for gold. And it doesn't matter how deep you dig the pit as long as you get your gold. Because that earth you're digging is very important and special stuff. Just that little warning I wanted to add.
All
It
right.
does matter how you ask.
Yeah, Donna.
I said it does matter how you ask.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think intuitively, you know how far. I mean, an extrovert would probably tell you his or her whole life or the latest newest projects, and until you know it, you know everything. Yeah. Okay. Now I would like to jump back to Ken, because you said something lately in our Tuesday discussion that you don't really, because we were discussing, do we depart, is our story, if we talk about writing, is our screenwriting, is our story character driven or is it story driven? And I found this very interesting. Now, Ken, you have a slightly different approach.
Well, first off, I have to say, I create different kinds of characters. And the first character that I create when I'm on a project is the narrator. Who's telling it? Okay. What is their goal? What is their intent? And that is a project that I have no idea how it occurs. Sometimes it's really very strange. Like I have one book in which the narrator, okay, is inspired. I'm channeling a Native American. And in the actual process, he lied to me. This is how weird it gets. He lied to me, he told me his name so that I could write the book. And then at the very end, he says, now I'm going to tell you my real name. And I mean, I'm not talking in the book, he said, I'm saying in my head. He says, now I'm going to tell you my real name so you can look up and verify what I've told you. And he did. And I looked for, and yes, everything he had told me now made sense. I'd never heard of this guy. Okay. And he appears in the book by his real name, but the name he had gone all the way through telling me this story had been a different name. So, I mean, where do these narrators come from? I don't know. The next person I create, the next character I create is my reader, viewer, listener, whoever that is. And again, where do they come from? I know that Plenty Horses, okay, wanted me to tell this story to people like Elizabeth Warren, who think they're Native American because it's convenient for them to think they're Native American, but really don't understand what that means, okay, and what the real conflict is. And so when I'm writing this book, I'm thinking of Elizabeth Warren as the reader. I don't know if she'll ever read it, but that's who's reading it in my mind. Now, the third thing is now I have to create the characters in the book. And I don't know, again, where do they come from? Sometimes they come from people I've met. Sometimes they're just there. Sometimes just something will trigger them. I really never know. The only thing I'm absolutely sure of, is that they have to want to be in there. If they don't want to be in what I'm writing, they don't cooperate. And there's nothing worse, as Joe was alluding, there is nothing worse than characters who refuse to cooperate with you. Sometimes it's very funny because sometimes, you really think you know where it's going to go. And then you have to accept the fact that a good character may not agree with you. And so that's the other thing. And I have had characters who I knew she's going to fall in love with him. No, I'm not. I'm falling in love with him. And including one character in Broody New Englander, who actually literally woke me up in the middle of the night to tell me that the child, the daughter, she says, I'm seeing her. She's shaking the end of my bed at Dairy Hollow, the writers colony at Dairy Hollow. And she's saying, what makes you think it's his child? And I get up and I finish writing a novella in like a couple of days' time that I had been desperately working on. But she literally said, no, he's not the father. I love this guy. So anyway, that's some of my interactions with characters, and I've gone on long enough.
Yeah, that's interesting. Who do you write for? That is, yeah. Yeah, so we have writers who did, Clarabelle. How about you, Liz? How do you approach? Is it always the same? You find your characters or your story or your audience?
It varies. I was just thinking, I wasn't sure if I should tell this story or not. There is one short story I wrote. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Sorry, Joseph was making signs, so I thought maybe I was being too quiet. Which I have to admit is heavily based on my sister-in-law, my mother-in-law, which is, I accept, a little problematic, but it's not. It's based on them, it's not them, but I suspect were they ever to read the story, they might recognise themselves, but they're not very likely to read the story, so I think I'm fairly safe there, which is probably taking it a bit too far, really. You probably shouldn't. I think in that I probably made a mistake. You shouldn't really do that too much, and I've tried not to do it again, but it was based on them, it's based on another character we met, and I just saw the possibilities if you twisted it a bit, and it actually turned into a horror story, a sort of fantasy horror story. So I think that's one case where I actually did base it on real people, But another story I wrote was actually based on an incident and some characters, because there was my next door neighbour actually was having some teenagers sitting on the wall of his front garden, and they were smoking weed and they were drinking and generally being a nuisance. And he wouldn't do anything about it. And I didn't base character him, but again, that gave me inspiration for another fantasy horror story about what if the character there was recluse and he actually was something, a different mystical character, and actually these teenage girls were actually not what they seemed. So occasionally I do base stories on real incidents and yes, sometimes on real people, but normally I just think I use elements of people I know. I wouldn't do it again. I think I've heard from that, because I must admit I do live in fear and dread that one day my sister-in-law might read the story and recognise herself and they'll be held to pay.
Okay, yeah. I know, Ken, that you have written a play as well.
Oh, a few, yeah.
A few, yeah. And you also mentioned one intriguing thing that you said, because I was going on and on about in acting, as an actor, creating three-dimensional characters is so important. Sophie can write a book about this probably too. But you said you're working with someone, with your co-writer, the latest,
yes,
yeah. And you said, well, I'm not so sure about this three-dimensional character thing. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I sure have much better memory of the discussion than I do. But we were talking about, I think when we were talking about that, we said the characters have past, present, and future.
Exactly.
I think it was time dimensional.
Yeah, we said body, mind, and soul, past, present, future. Yeah,
but I don't know, that, because my characters are living, they're existent in a world that is different from our world, because they're living mostly in Nigeria. So our perception of time, of those things, time and things, is different than my friend Uma's. And so I've been learning from him that there may be more than those dimensions. For example, there's a spirit world. And in our plays, we have these spirits who go with intentionality into the world and change the world, which is something very different from European characters. Similarly, in my Native American book, the storytellers are telling stories that exist in timelessness. Okay. Time is something that is very much a European construct. Many of the things in our lives, we have to learn are European in construct. And one of the things I always try and point out to people is that the world does not actually set its time in Greenwich, England. That is a Western European notion of time. Okay.
That's true. Has anyone else among us been, how can I say, experimented with, yes, Joseph, I know you have, in Empty Sky. Experimented with time, with the concept of a different notion of time. Amy.
Well, I did ceremonies in South America, similar to Joseph, not the same people. But when you're in ceremony, there really is no concept of time. I mean, 5 minutes could be hours or could be seconds. And the difference doesn't really matter. It's kind of like a flow, like a connection. It sounds kind of sounds lame. Oh, I have a connection to the universe. I mean, everybody says that, you know, when they're speaking about things, but you really do. You just, you can see. So I learned how to see past, present, and future in just a candlelight. So you can see people when they're young, and like say you broke your arm when you were 14 and you move backwards till you're young, and you know that the person is a teenager, but their arm could look frail and weak and out of disjointed or whatever, and you can say, tell me about your arm, or something like that. And then when they start to talk about it, it resolves. I mean, they could be 50, but they're experiencing themselves as being 14, and so are we. And then that's how you resolve things from the past. And you don't know if they're standing there for a minute or either they're standing there for an hour, because you're just experiencing the flow. You're not experiencing flow of time. You're experiencing the flow. Joseph, did I explain it? Good. Okay, awesome.
I can see Ken's hand.
Yeah, I wanted to just pick up on the time thing, that I have many, since I've moved out here to Arizona, which is where I live now, I have many Native American friends. And one of the things that I've learned about and from them is that they protect their time from us Europeans. And we were at a meeting up in Window Rock, the Navajo Council. And, you know, it started on time, you know, everything was like very European, Euro-American. And I said something about witches. And after the, oh, we don't, no such thing here. And then after the meeting, they all came up to me and said, how did you know? How do you know that that's our reality? Because we never tell white people basically about this stuff. And I said, because we're supposed to be of humanity. So one of the things that we have done, and I think we really have as artists, and particularly, I'm going to say, I think this is particularly true of the rhythmic art, music and dance, but we really have to start being aware more and more that there is more than one sense of temporality in the world. There is more than one sense of reality in the world. There is more than one method of communication in the world. And that real art, the real art, has to go into that. And, you know, unfortunately, one of the things is, I think if we look back at so much of the Western arts, we impose that sense of time. We impose the sense of time in things that now we have to realize, hey, wait a minute, maybe there are other ways to go forward.
Yeah, thank you. A question, Joseph, Mark. Can I jump to the dance floor? I would. Or is that too early? I'm sorry. It's the first time that I.
Go for it. Would you like to open it up?
Because I'm so happy to have Gina Mazza. Mazza? How do? Forgive me if I don't pronounce that right. Gina with us, and I'm dying to hear how you create or incorporate a character. Do you create a character? Are they ready and you incorporate them? You interpret them on stage, on the dance floor. I hear that you are, amongst many other things, a professional dancer.
Well, I love this discussion about character because I do, as a writer, I deal mostly in nonfiction, and that's because I just happen to think that the real world is infinitely more fascinating than any characters that we can create. And we create them, at least in my experience, I create them based on that honesty of like how true can we get to real life. And that's what really draws me into anything, whether it's a dance performance or it's a play or it's a movie, is if it mimics real life in a way that feels really authentic to me, then I'm in. I'm all down for it. So I just feel like honesty is a really important characteristic of that, as well as dance. I mean, with dance, you know, obviously it is the embodiment of the words. We don't have words when we're dancing, so we have to use the body to express that emotion. And again, it's not about putting on a performance, it's about feeling it within you, and being able to express. You're just doing it with your temporary form of physicality versus words. And I don't know, I mean, I've been a lover of writing and dance my entire life. So to me, they're so intertwined that that they kind of intersect each other in so many ways. I don't know if that was there another question that you wanted to ask about that? Because I'm not sure I'm on track with what you were asking me to talk about.
No, that's fine. Yeah, it's interesting. You also say there's not that you can't really separate one from the other. I find that very interesting too. Yeah. So yeah, but is there any specific how can I say, any specific craft? Or I mean, of course there is a craft in dancing, like there is in other performing arts. But is there any specific way you go about approaching a character that you have to dance on stage, let's say?
Yeah, again, you know, dance, writing, living in general, just all sort of intersect for me. So it sort of comes from the same place or the same modality, which is really being connected to source. I mean, I just feel like creativity and higher consciousness, creativity all emanate from the same source. So it's being really clear on that. And I call it the PVC pipe. You know, it's like having that pipe like really pristine, so that when we are wanting to, or even when we're not, when we're distracted and doing something else, and then some idea comes to us, it's all about just being highly receptive to that in the moment when it is coming towards us and receiving it. So characters for me, in dance, in writing, and in life, you know, they kind of have their own essence, their own entity. Like characters for me have their own, they're their own entity. And like a lot of you were expressing earlier, they take on not just a life of their own, like in my mind, but it's really not so much my imagination that is creating them as it is just I'm listening, I'm taking dictation almost. I'm just, you know, a vessel for the creator to just listen and say, okay, I've got a line on you, or the creator has a line on me, and I'm a willing recipient, a willing receptacle of that. And so I just listen, and I don't really invent. I just, again, it's sort of a seamless creation of the entity, the character, the plot, the personality that I'm, the role that I'm dancing. It's really just them speaking to me as a separate creation and telling me what they want, and then me being true to that, me being faithful to that. I don't know if this makes any sense. It's kind of hard to articulate, but that's how it happens for me.
Well, Joseph, your hand is up.
Thank you. Before I say what I want to say, I want to note that both Anne and Mac have been very patient. We will get to you, I promise. I do have a question for those on the panel who I recognize are in what I call performing arts, meaning your body is your instrument. This would be for Sabine and Sophie and Gina. I have seen mimes who have their faces painted a very specific way, or makeup, I guess, So their face cannot move essentially. And yet their bodies are so expressive that I can be in tears or laughing my head off. And it's not because they're doing something necessarily comic. You know, I've seen mimes be comical. I've seen dancers be comical. And I do laugh, but I've also witnessed actors and dancers who can generate such a pathos simply by the way they move. And that, to me, that's when I, you know, we're watching a movie or something, or I'm watching something on stage. That's when I have my notebook out. I'm taking notes. They did this, they made this motion, you know, because going back to character, to me, everything stems out of the emotional base of, you know, if I understand a character's emotions, I know what they're going to say, I know they're going to behave, I have a good line on what they actually look like. And to your point, Gina, about it's just being true to the characters, to what's happening. Yes, I totally agree with that, because if when I'm writing something and I decide to not do what my characters want to do, it stops dead. We talked about that last time in creative blocks. I have to, you know, I have to go, okay, because they know better than I do what's going to happen. So I totally get that. And I would be very curious to know from you in the performing arts, and Mac as well, because your art is a very time-based art, music. How do you demonstrate through physicality, through emotion, through the instrument, which is obviously you're playing, but it's not you to a certain point, and because I don't know enough about painting, I apologize. Where do you get that ability to demonstrate emotion through character? Is it the emotion gives you the character? Is it the character, you read the script, you look at the music? Ah, okay, I know what this character is going to be like. He's a prick. Oh, he's a genius. Oh, she's nice. Oh, she's evil. I'll be quiet now.
Sophie.
May I jump in on that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had, yeah, then Sophie had her hand up.
Go ahead.
So we'll get back.
It's fine. Go ahead, Gina. It's fine.
Well, the dance obviously is training, you know, it's a different way of getting at it, meaning that like a musician or anyone else that is working at their craft, it's repetition over and over and over again. You know, if I had $1 for every plie I've done in my life, I'd be a rich woman. But it's doing the same things over and over and over again and perfecting them, and you get to the point where you're conscious and very tuned into every specific aspect of your body, every single thing, the lift of your chin, the way that your shoulders, every single aspect. These things are worked on, you know, over and over and over again. And each one has a part to play in the expression of that emotion or expression of that character. You get to the point where you've worked the body so much that when you're ready to perform, or, you know, the music comes up. For me, I'm really melodically driven too. So when the music comes on and ready to perform, that, you know, you stop thinking about a million different things that the dancers are thinking about in the back of their head when they're ready to go out on stage. And then you transcend that. And it's like it almost, you know, you're almost not in your body anymore. So you're overtaken by the character that you're playing, or the music that you're performing to, or the audience, you know, that you're performing for. And so it's kind of like, you know, we were talking a minute ago about that sense of timelessness. It's like, if you're dancing correctly, I would say, you're outside of time when you're doing it. That makes sense.
Sophie, here I come throwing the question at you. Shouldn't we all do more dance? We as actors? I mean, it's part of a classical theater training anyhow. movement.
Well,
and
I fight. I don't dance, but I
you
fight.
That's
I do stage
interesting.
I do stage combat. I'm doing stage combat and I do HEMA training. So my version of dance is having swords and other weapons. Yeah, I saw your question, Joseph, and I'm not exactly in the non-writers group. I'm also a playwright. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades. So for me, to answer the question how I create characters really depends on the context. As an actress, I create characters through imagination because I'm imagining the situation I'm in. I'm not ever playing emotions. I'm always imagining and living the situation, and that brings up emotions. So that's why I never know how I'm going to feel. And then obviously I can look actively for contrast. So if I'm getting angry, then I can choose to be really sweet in the way I'm saying my lines. And then I create subtext. That also then depends on the relationship I'm having. So I need to create the relationship to the opposite character. I need to create the relationship to the third mentioned characters. And with those, it's important not who they are, but what does it do to me in the moment that it's been brought up. If I play, I don't know, let's say a mother that gets divorced and I have a young child and it's about custody, what does it do to me that my child is being brought into the conversation right now? It doesn't matter what my relationship to the child is, or not that strongly, of course it does matter, but the more important thing is like, what does it do that my ex-husband or their lawyer brings up that child right now, and what does that do? How does that affect me? So that's how I'm creating. As an actress, I need to know some bits about the history, but sometimes I don't get the information, so I only need to know the relevant bits. So if I have an audition, I need to know if I do something that seems out of character in a scene, I need to know what enables me to be out of character suddenly, what happened in the past. So I'm creating just a snippet of imagined history. Other than that, I try to stay to what I know about the character, because if I create too much, I might just create past the writer's vision. As a writer, characters just jump on me, and then similar to what's been said, they have an agenda. Like, I have a good example. The other day, I wanted as an actress, I wanted to do some thriller scenes, and then a friend said, "Why don't you write a short film?" I was like, as a thriller, that is very hard. It's a very short time, and to write a thriller in a short, no. And then I read something about a crisis negotiator, and I thought, like, okay, maybe I could write something, a short story that would work about a crisis situation. And then suddenly characters jumped on me, and the story was completely different, has nothing to do with a crisis negotiator or anything. It is almost like horror thriller, and not at all what I had planned on writing. But it got so obsessively loud in my head that I had no choice to start writing it. I had no choice. And then suddenly the characters went quiet because I tried to control them, and then they refused to talk to me. And it was infuriating because I was like, you're not what I want to do. I want to write for me as an actress to get some footage right now. I don't want to think as a writer, but my characters refused. So I had to be like, okay, what story is it? Tell me then. And then I have to deal with what I got. So as a writer, I really have not much choice. It just happens. And that often gets triggered by a single tiny thing, like reading about an interesting job. I don't really take inspiration from people I meet, I think. Or if I do, it's very subconsciously. But where it often comes from is from a feeling. Like I have a feeling I want to write a story from. Like a play I've written, which we now finally, I can't say that, can't speak about that, breaking things. A play. I just wanted to write about a certain type of relationship because I have a thing for writing very healthy relationships, because I miss them in media and theatre. I want healthy, strong relationships and good communication without the story being boring. So that was where that play had started from. As a voice artist, if I have a really good book, like I'm narrating this 26-parter book series based on the Grimm fairy tales, which is fantastic, the writer gives me the character. All I need to do is I need to hear their words, their way of speaking, their way of being, and the voice creates itself. In books where everybody sounds the same, it's a lot more work. And then I need to create differences without betraying the book, but still having a variety for our side. So yeah, so for me, it really depends on the discipline I'm doing. As a fighter, if I do stage combat, I also need to create character, because the whole meaning of stage combat is action that suits the words. So I need to find out, why am I so aggressive that I'm picking up a sword and I want to murder somebody? What's going on there? Like, how can I do that physically. I also did a lot of Chekhov-based things, which is playing around a lot with like the physicality and differently imagined centers from where you can move, which can be within you, they can be outside of you, and you just feel it and let it affect you. So I guess the overarching thing is imagination in all of them, just like in different ways and in different whatever is needed, really.
Okay. So watch out for Sophie. Ken, you had your hand up, and I think it's about time to open it up also, nearly.
I just have a fairly pedantic question for Gina. I was going to ask the same thing about Sophie, but she's told us so much. But Gina, what you haven't told us, what kind of dance you do, what you're trained in, and I think that does matter when it comes to creating characters. I'm a big fan of ballet, but I'm also a big fan of modern and I'm a big fan of dance, period. But what kind of dance do you concentrate on, if I may ask?
So when I was about 5 years old, my mom took me to see the Nutcracker, and I fell in love. And I had a recognition of something within myself that seemed just really natural to me. Like I wanted to do it. I wanted to explore that. And it wasn't because I was bored or I don't know. It was just like a propulsion towards it. So she signed me up for dance class because she thought, because I was kind of a flighty child. A little bit of a wild child. So I guess she thought this was going to be like finishing school or something for me. But I was put in ballet class because that was the finishing school part of it. I wasn't, jazz and modern was not a consideration. My parents were beautiful people, very conservative, and of their generation, and so I just started studying ballet and was on point by the time I was, I don't know, 8 or 9. I'm probably suffering the consequences of that now. But ballet was my main love for sure. But over the years, I did everything. I mean, I taught, teaching dance was part of how I started to, I had a real job, full-time job, but I worked for 3 years before I went to college because, I was paying my own way. So I was teaching dance. And then when I got to college, I was, teaching down there as well and performing. And it was never my full-time career. And that's a whole other story, which I won't bore you with. But I was, basically told at some point I had gotten a audition with the Rockettes, and my dad, I was still living at home, and my dad was like, no effing way is my daughter going to dance on a stage in New York. So it was, there's a whole story behind me being, my ambitions to be a dancer was squelched. And that's, again, like I said, a whole other story because it gets into what happens to us and what blocks us when people say these kinds of things to us, especially in our formative years. But he was right. I mean, it wasn't meant to be my full-time career my entire life, but I've danced my whole life. That I guess the interesting thing that I want to add to that as a final piece is that I stopped performing at some point when I had moved to Washington, D.C. and was working in my career, corporate life and all of that. And then fast forward maybe 5 or 6 years later, I was married and I had my kids, and I found that I couldn't go to dance performances anymore because I would just cry. I would just weep. And I didn't know what that was, other than, it can, Scorpio sun sign, I don't know, but I couldn't do it anymore. And so I turned inward and looked at that and realized that it was because I missed it. And so I went back into it full bore for the next, I don't know, like 20 years of my life. And that's when I was able to do all different types of dance. And modern to me is, just phenomenal. I mean, like, I remember as a kid watching Isadora Duncan and just thinking like, wow, I want to be her. Martha Graham, certainly Mikhail Baryshnikov and all of those role models that, you know, just inspired so many people. I mean, it's a really powerful art form for sure. So
I
thank
have
you
to
for asking.
follow that up because your answer is so, wow, off the charts, powerful answer. And I'm just wondering, am I the only one who's right now fighting with themselves? Gee, I want to write that story. I want to make that movie, but it really isn't mine to make. It's hers, and I hope she does. Are other people thinking that kind of thing right now about Gina's story?
We had Donna. Donna has her hand up, has had her hand up for a while.
Hi, I wanted to say that I identify with some of the things that Gina said. Years ago, I borrowed some books from an actor on body language because they tell you as an author to show, don't tell. And I think body language is one of the best ways to write what a character is feeling and doing. So I learned from that art form. And I also identify with what she said about later on, after you've studied and practiced, the same sort of thing happened with my writing. I kept trying to learn and learn and learn. Oh dear. And I'm not sure how to turn that off. But eventually my writing became very instinctive to me. And so now I don't worry so much about thinking about the mechanics of it. I just do my thing, and it is more instinctive because of all my learning.
Mac, please speak to us.
Watch what you ask for.
Well, I would like to know about the music.
Well, I'll get to that. I have one little aside, Gina. I just rewatched Independence Day. You know, the movie with the monsters from space and stuff. And there's a great scene where the first lady's crashed, and she's rescued by the young woman who's involved with Will Smith. And she says, the first lady says, "What do you do?" And she says, "I'm a dancer." And the first lady says, "Ballet?" And the young woman says, "Exotic."
Okay.
Which is such a great line.
Wow, yeah.
I qualify as introverted and shy, and I have a stutter. And I also grew up in a family that did not deal with emotions. It took me until I was almost 40 to realize I was not only not supposed to talk about them, I wasn't supposed to have them. So this creativity thing for me has satisfied both those needs very much, because you can't stutter when you sing. Nobody knows why. So singing gave me the way. And so I was very fortunate to get some really good vocal coaches. And that also led me to theater. I screwed my courage to the sticking point and took a theater class that scared the shit out of me. But after the first night, and I was covered with sweat, the woman teaching the class said, "I have a professional repertory company. We have auditions on Saturday. Could you come?"
Wow.
Well, indeed. I used a short word, but it wasn't well. And as I was leaving the room, she said, "By the way, you do dumb really well."
Oh.
Which I absolutely took as a compliment. So I write some too, but the music I wrote and played was always about a character. I got some really good gigs. I got to open up for some pretty big acts, which I really loved. And it was because every song I sang, I was the character. I was completely sucked into the character's voice. So, you know, I didn't get asked to play it like Pizza Huts and stuff, you know. I didn't play Highway to Heaven or, you know. So I did, you know, Randy Newman and Ry Cooder and all the people who sing from a different character's point of view than they are. And that's what I loved about it. And in theater, I discovered there were some resonance there, because character for me, when I'm in that mode, is almost entirely tactile. It's physical, it's skin, right? Our issues are in our tissues.
I like that. I shall take note.
Oh, cool. I'll charge you my special low rate for
Thank you,
new
Mac.
people. Yeah, it's the
I'm
least I
forever
can.
grateful.
I was cast in a play once in two roles. One was a cocaine sniffing TV executive, and the other one was the commandant of Auschwitz. So the director saw something in me and said, "This guy's perfect for these two parts." But I couldn't get the uniform for the Auschwitz guy until right before dress rehearsal. And as soon as I put the uniform on, I was him. I needed that touch. I needed that physicality. And dress rehearsal afterwards, the director said, "Can I see you a minute?" Just that tone of voice. You know, it's like, uh-oh. So he makes sure everybody else is out of the theater, even the crew. And he sits down and he says, "I need to ask you to back off from that character a little bit." He said, "You're scaring the actors and you're scaring the folks backstage." So I was too much. There was not enough of me left in the part. It was totally not me. Now, obviously that's there or I couldn't do it. But so character for me is the necessary ingredient in singing, in playing the guitar, in acting, in writing. That's where it all comes from me. As my friend Bud Stupai once said, since I got in touch with my inner child, my invisible friend is jealous.
Oh, that's so sweet.
So that's where it is. So a real quick creativity story is my all-time favorite story, and then I'll back away. It's free drawing day in the first grade class, which means you can do anything you want. So the teacher notices there's a little girl all the way in the back of the class, and she has drawn up a storm. So she goes back to the back of the class and she says, "You're having so much fun. What are you drawing?" And the little girl looks up at her and she says, "I'm drawing God." And the teacher says, "But sweetie, nobody knows what God looks like." And the little girl looks up at her and says, "They will in a minute."
Wow. That's
That's
good
all.
story. Anne, please.
Yes, well, I want to start by saying Alfred Hitchcock once said that he never goes on vacation because the actual vacation never meets the expectations of his imagination. And it's been interesting that I've been listening to everyone and how they've acquired and made friends with their characters, and they converse with them all through their imagination. So, and then, you know, Gina, you're a dancer and someone fights and we all have, and sings. So we all have a different way of taking what we receive as day-to-day input and then creating an output that best suits our imagination. And I think that I'm trying to remember what everybody said so I can hit some of the key points, but I think making friends with that. So I'm different from everyone. I paint. So my characters come in places that I've been in my imagination based on my reality experiences or color or atmosphere. That's where I garner my friends. And then I express my friends on a canvas. So I think that if we can make friends and allow our imagination to be open and receptive, you know, Gina, you basically paint with your feet. I mean, they move and dance across the floor. And if you had two pencils attached to your feet, imagine what a beautiful picture that would be. Or the taps, what a beautiful sound that would be. Or Mac, like you say, your song, you couldn't sing that song unless you were in character. And those characters come out of ourselves, all different facets of ourselves. So, you know, I'm trying to learn to make friends with, you know, my atmosphere and my places that I've been, so that I could express them. So it's a great group of people, and I certainly appreciate being here.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you. Mark, your hand is up.
Yeah, yes, it is. Thank you. Actually, right now my head is kind of spinning because I can't believe all the things that are getting tied up here. So, Gina, when you were first talking, you used honesty. You used the word honesty. And then when Joseph was talking, he used the word truth. And that just made me think about faith, which I think I think we earn faith in what we do. You were talking about training and discipline in dance, Gina. But I think we come to our faith in our ability to do those things by doing them. And then in doing those things in ways that are true to ourselves, I think that's how we achieve and can project integrity. But the first thing that occurred to me when you used the word honesty, and actually the same thing occurred to me when Joseph said truth. Honest to or with whom, and what truth. So everything that we do creatively is necessarily a matter of interpretation. So if for example, and I'm actually going to go to Sabine. If I happened to write something that ended up being adapted for the stage or for film, I think you could only begin to imagine my intent. And then you would have to interpret that in your performance. And that, I think, means that you would be honest with yourself and truthful to your interpretation of that when you expressed that. And I found that resonating in what Anne was saying as well. We have to find that truth for ourselves. And I think at least for a writer, I think being able to find that truth for ourselves is what gives us our voices as writers. So I wonder what anyone else makes of that.
Amy, you have your hand up.
I'm sorry, one other thing I wanted to add. It's also completely tied into what Mac was saying about his way to interpret those songs is to be a different character in each one. I mean, that's a perfect fit. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh. No, never mind. Yeah. I would just like to pick up on that. My truth as someone who interprets or can only try to understand your intent, as you said, Mark, as a performer who is interpreting on stage or on camera. I think that becomes very, very clear for us as performers with the post-COVID e-casting self-tape stories. I think that invites us to learn to have faith in what we believe the intent is, what we believe is right for the scene, right? Because oftentimes we find ourselves now to have no casting director who can direct us. We don't have the possibility to talk with the author or with a casting director or with the film director. At best, we get a good description, as Sophie has said. So I think obviously we have to be true to the material, the way we see it as true. But I think at the end of the day, it always comes back to you, what you in that moment feel is right. When I say feel, that is maybe not the right word. It's an intuitive thing. Yes, you have the facts, but eventually you have to translate into you have to translate all that into a performance. And if you're on your own, maybe you have a partner to play with, great. But sometimes you are all on your own. And that's when we are invited, I think, to find that truth, our truth, that we give the character. That can resonate with the casting director or with the film director. We can get the role or not, but that's none of our business. Then it's out of our hand and it's we have no influence on that. But I do think we can find, as you said so beautifully also, we can find our voice in the one or in the other role.
And I want to share this too, Sabine, excuse me, especially because you've noticed and commented some of the things that I put on LinkedIn about the graphic novel that I'm working on.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I got more evidence of this as recently as today because 2 more pages have been colored and the narration and talk bubbles put in. But Cody Sims, the illustrator, is interpreting that. Mm-hmm. And he is doing things with scenes that I wrote that I never would have imagined. And I don't have any desire at all to try to impose intent on him, because in my estimation, the work is better because he's interpreting it from his perspective. He's contributing his discipline, and it's just an amazing thing to find stuff in my script that I couldn't have even imagined would be in there. And he's finding it and he's putting it in his illustrations. It's just brilliant and humbling. Come on,
yeah, I hear you. Amy, you've had your hand up for a while.
No one supposed to sit still. You
does the meeting end at 2:30? I was just
need to, I don't think.
Okay, well, I didn't want to talk too long if we're closing up, but no.
Talk.
All right. So I actually just wanted to thank everybody because well, my first book will be coming out this summer, but I wrote chapters 2 through 10 first, and I wrote chapter 1 last, which I don't know if other people do it that way, but it's how I used to write papers and curriculum and contracts and all that. I create the whole body and then I do the beginning, because then by that time I have it all in my mind. But I had finished all of chapter 1, except I had this one little thing that I needed to tie the entire book together, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and it was driving me crazy. And I was thinking and hiking and talking and doing all kinds of things trying to come up, and I never called it a character. I always thought it was a thing I needed to find, and it wasn't until you guys just called it a character I said, oh my God, it is a character. And I actually woke up, it had been on my mind for like a month, and I woke up and I said out loud at midnight, Spirit Blue Elixir. and it just came right out of my mouth. And I'm like, oh my God, that's it. And I texted the entire portion of that book, which came out to be about 2 or 3 pages. I texted it to myself in the bedroom at night in the dark. And when it was done at 4 o'clock in the morning, I was like, awesome, I've got it done. Now I can go to sleep. And but I was calling it a thing. And when you guys started talking about it, I'm like, Spirit Blue Elixir is not a thing, it's a character. And every single person that drinks the Spirit Blue Elixir, which is open to interpretation in my book, embodies a character, and the character is ultimately not healthy for them. And I wouldn't have described it this way until I spoke to you all today, because I was calling it a thing, but it's not. It's a spirit, and it's real, and it exists technically in another realm, except all of us have most likely embodied it at some point in our life. So thank you, everybody.
Great. Well, wow. Thank you, Amy. Sophie.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, follow on from what Mark just said. I think like every story goes through like a crystallization process. So when we're writing, we know everything so in depth, but what's in the end of the page is only a fraction of the stuff in our minds. But therefore, we obviously lose sight of what someone else would understand without the extra stuff. And to me, like then handing it over to a dramaturg or other people reading it, and then eventually to a director and to performers, it's just like crystallizing the essence, the truth of that story more and more and more. And then by the end of it, it might be something I didn't even think of, like the play I'm working on right now. My director said, because there's foxes in the play, there's one real fox or like real foxes and a fox puppet. And we talked about the play, and she said, well, this is kind of the essence between the characters. These foxes, they kind of symbolize the relationship. And I never saw it that way. And I really love that when then other people start to kind of, yeah, boil it more down to what it is actually about. So maybe by the end of the whole process, me as a writer, I actually get a glimpse of what the essence truly is, because I don't think I know when I'm writing. I think I know. And then all these other people come in and show me all these other things. And then you can probably ask anyone who consumed the story, and they might have a different view on it or similar view. So I don't know if really we will ever know the real full truth of any story, but maybe there isn't just one. Maybe there's just many versions of that truth, and that I think can be quite beautiful.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Sophie. I don't know. Is there anyone else who has questions? Or we haven't heard from Ron yet. Do you want to know anything, say anything? Do you have questions, inspirations to share?
Well, I really, this has been very helpful to me. I'm just beginning myself, but it's just awesome all the ways you've related characters to dance and art and all kinds of things. I'm really eager to get involved in this, but thank you for letting me join you.
Well, thank you for being here, Ron. And fingers crossed. Way to go. What did you say?
I said, I hope we can come back, Ron.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, actually, I had one more question about the difference. I know that you probably all the writers amongst us write different styles or different kinds of stories. I'm not a writer at all. I know that Sophie, for example, is writing plays and film scripts. Yeah, and Ken is doing novels and fiction and theater and plays. Yeah, so yeah, so if you are bringing characters to life in a script, is there any difference from the character from creating a character for a script to creating a character in a play? So that's my question to those who do both. Both of these disciplines.
I know my hand is up, but
yeah, Mark.
And I wrote my graphic novel using a template for screenplays, but Ken also put his hand up, and I suspect it's from the standpoint of writing plays, and I can't speak to that.
Okay. Go ahead,
Go
Ken.
ahead, Mark, first, because you have something to say. And
well, I just wanted to make a shameless plug first, and it's not for me. This is Gina's latest book, which I recently got, and an extraordinary series of events kicked off this week. The same morning that Anne and I read the very first poem in Gina's book. So I'm sharing that because I'm also going to put something in the chat window, which followed the very same day. And you can watch this. If you have Facebook, you can watch this after we're done here. But it's absolutely mind-boggling to me. And the idea that that thing should come to me the same day I read Gina's poem is, I'm still trying to figure it all out, actually.
Well, let me follow up by saying, Gina, I didn't know you were also a poet, and I would love to read some of your stuff, and I hope you read some of mine. Yes, I see it. Thank you. Now,
sorry, one more interruption. I just want to, I am not on commission, by the way.
Okay, all good, all good. Go ahead, Ken.
Would have been all right if you were. Let's help each other. For me, when I'm writing characters in a play, I'm seeing them in interaction with the other characters in the play. They are alive in the moment of the scene. Now, I'm relatively new to screenwriting, but what I see when I'm in screenwriting mode, I see the characters as interacting with me. And I have to decide whether to allow them to live or not. I never have that issue with a stage play character. They're there because they're integral to the story. But in screenplay writing, what I've discovered so far, and I've consulted on a few screenplays too, so it's not just on my own writing, the characters want to take it over. They want to tell me what to do. I've never had that happen with a stage character. The stage characters want to boss each other around. No, I want that bag of gold. No, I want that bag of gold. But they're not saying, you know, hey, Weene, get the hell out of here. But with film writing characters, I find they actually want to take over. They want to tell their story at the expense of me. And so I go at them with a machete. I actually at times envision myself swinging. There you go. Watch your head roll down. And right now, I'm just writing a science sci-fi kind of thing. It's a portal story, you know, where people go through a portal kind of thing, but a strange twist. And I had written this whole first scene with this character. I love the character. She was just such a great character, except that she was just making it up. So I brought her back now. She's no longer in the first scene. She's in like the third scene, but she's a corpse. I literally filled her full of lead so she couldn't take over my script. Okay, that's what I did want to go off on one other little tangent, if I might, just something, you know, folks, for those of you who don't know, Joe is the guy who started this forum. And one of the things I find just amazing, I hope you others have found it too, today I've got 3 other topics, at least 3 topics that I thought about. Wow, we could have a whole show about this topic. And so I just want to invite people, when you're listening to this, when you're think about what questions you might want to bring, and so we can have more and more and more exciting discussions. Plug for Joe.
Yeah, great. That's a very good idea. Yeah, just drop it in the chat or say it out loud.
And could I just remind folks, there is a Facebook group for this group. You have to ask to join, but I wasn't refused. So, I mean, anybody's going to get in.
Yeah. Joseph.
How do you find it?
Say what you want to say, please. Your hand is up. And your mic is off.
That to me?
Yeah, now we hear you. Yeah.
Just basking in the adoration, you know, it's just amazing. I wanted to to go a bit to what Mark and I believe Sophie were saying. Mark specifically, he wrote the story and now it's being turned into a graphic novel. I've been very blessed to have some amazing people look at my work and turn it into music, turn it into a radio play. Sabine, I will never stop thanking you for your voice work on some of my work. And I'm also very much aware, this goes back to a previous conversation which Ken was leading, that whenever I hand my work over to another medium, I'm engaging in collaboration. They know more about their medium than I do. You know, the graphic artist that you're talking about, Mark, he knows what works. He knows how to draw people's eyes. And I'm sure the same thing is true for you. You know how to direct someone's eyes onto a picture, onto a painting, I'm sorry. Dancers, people who use their body, you know how to direct somebody's gaze to a certain part of yourself or the stage or the movement. So whenever I am working with someone outside of my chosen medium, I know that I'm entering into an act of collaboration, and they know, I believe, I hope, they know more about what their medium allows than I do. And I will have to trust. The one exception is, and I did have this happen once, when some people call it their inner bullshit meter. To me, it's the inner violation meter. Somebody will do something and I'll go, no, whoa. There are times when people add stuff or bring stuff to what I've written. I'm like, whoa, my God, you did that, Sabine. I'm like, oh my God, where'd you get that, woman? But there are other times, very rare, when somebody will do something and I'll say, no. I'm interviewing narrators now for my books. And some of them are just, my God, that is perfect. You missed one word, but that word is in Brazilian Portuguese, so let me help you out there. But other ones are like, did you read what I wrote? You know, and I have to be aware of they're taking my creation into their medium, and I have to allow them freedom, provided they do not violate, what would we call it? The spirit, the essence, you know, the core, the being. And this, you know, we've all been talking about this, about being, you know, going on Mahalik Csikszentmihalyi's work, being in the flow. When we are in that space, we are in the flow, and dear God, don't get in our way. You know, I'd be, you know, it'd be kind of fascinating to be a fly on the wall when Gina's in one of her creative modes, because I can see her, you know, sitting down typing and her feet are going crazy too. But you know, it's that thing, and I want to back off now. And Ron, you had your hand up, so I hope you will come on back.
Well, I don't know if you're aware of this. There's a called Save the Cat beat sheet, and it's written one for script, and it's written for. They start with a TV script, but now they do it for novels, and it's a really good way it's like a roadmap for a story. And also with the inclusion of AI, you can take any novel, probably classical, and say, just do a beat sheet on this novel, and it'll tell you, it'll give you the beat sheet. It'll explain what it is and do it. So Save the Cat beat sheet. I put it on the chat. It's worth looking into.
Great, thank you. Yeah, AI would probably, in the arts, would probably another subject of discussion, hot as it is. Maybe we can tackle it one day, just throwing it out.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to respond to Joseph's point with another illustration, no pun intended. When I wrote this and found the illustrator, she said to me, "What do you want me to do?" And I said, "I'm not going to tell you that. If I could do what you do, I would do it, but I can't." So I had no desire to provide any direction for that at all. And if you do that kind of thing, I'm getting the pages for my graphic novel, 2 and 3 at a time. It's like Christmas. Every time I get one of these things, I feel like I'm opening something amazing, and it's always a really pleasant, humbling surprise. Same thing with the one and only Ben. I had no idea what I was going to get, but it's wonderful.
Thanks a lot, everyone, for your input, for your thoughts, for your secrets, for sharing all this. I don't really have any conclusion that I should maybe say something in conclusion, except a few keywords that I resonated with. Truth, integrity, that line to the source, whatever source is for everybody. And maybe that's a place we should not be afraid to visit and listen to, and train ourselves to listen to regularly. So the flow, that so-called flow, can continue to happen for all of you. Yeah, to stay open and receptive. And my top favorite hashtag, together we are strong. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks a
next
lot.
month.
It was great.
Thank you. Bye.